Please follow the numbering instructions on each page. Reading, listening, and watching offers enhanced insights. Please also make notes and jot down questions and comments as you go along and forward all to napha@napha.com.na. The slides play automatically and the voice and video will follow after each slide has started. Some slides do require a bit more reading, so please press pause should the video and voice start before you have completed the reading. You can of course pause, rewind and replay slides as you want throughout the presentation. Enjoy. The new measurement system should reverse the negative trend in hunting in Africa and prove applied conservation through hunting by selecting specific animals which have no effect on the sustainability of that species nor its genetic pool. The purpose and aim with this measurement system is to create incentives to hunt older animals past their prime, thereby ensuring that selective conservation hunting is genetically sustainable. This system should underline that humans should not implement their own views and preferences on how a trophy should look like, but rather let nature take its own course and let natural selection dictate which trophies show survival of the fittest. The system, moreover, also highlights the attraction and charisma of the often worn trophies of older animals.
Okay, here we have two eland trophies. Both of them are mature animals, thus of shootable age. On my left is a bull in the prime. The horns, the tips of the horns are still very long, and therefore this eland bull, according to the measurements, has a little bit of a better trophy than the eland bull on my right, which is an old animal past its prime. The old animal past its prime has worn tips of the horns, and therefore the horns are not as long as the one of the prime bull. But the aim of the age-related measurement system is to allow animals to completely fulfill their natural role, and this is what has happened to the bull on my right, the old bull. It is past the prime, it has fulfilled its breeding duties in the population, and therefore, according to the age-related measurement system and according to conservation principles, the trophy on my right is the better trophy.
Please note, it is not the aim to say that a big trophy is not a good trophy. We want to achieve a situation where big trophies can grow old. It is therefore not correct to say that an old trophy is necessarily the best trophy. The best trophy would therefore be a big trophy that was able to grow old. The goals of this system are the following: conservation, which is and should be the main goal of any type of sustainable use. With this system, we can establish a direct link between hunting and conservation. To substantiate hunting in Africa, this measurement system provides evidence to support or prove the truth of hunting and its contribution to conservation and biodiversity. Resilience. This system will assist to build insurance and safeguard hunting in Africa against current and future threats. Enhancement finding. This system serves as a tool within a management plan towards non-detriment or even enhancement findings for importing authorities.
To give an example, we here have two springbok trophies. Both of them are very big. Both of them are 18 inches long. This one is a prime trophy, prime age, and this one is an old one. According to the existing measuring systems, both of them would be more or less equal. According to the age-related measurement system, this one is the far better trophy. It is an outstanding trophy, and it was allowed to grow old and pass on its genes. Here then, we also have a big springbok trophy. It is about 16 inches big, but it was of an immature animal. This one should not have been hunted. Of course, mistakes happen, but this one should not have been hunted. It disqualifies according to the age-related measurement system because it was immature. So this one would not qualify, although it is a very big trophy. Here then we have a springbok of 14 inches. It would qualify because it is very old. So this should bring across the message: old and big is what we would like to place the emphasis on, but age is more important than size.
It is not the intention to decide the exact age in years of animals. For example, a buffalo that was 7, 11 or 14 years old, or whether a kudu was 5 or 8 years old, or a lion, whether it was 7 years old or not. It is not the actual age that we concentrate on, but rather an age class. These age classes are immature, prime, or past prime. We merely try to identify the correct age class of the trophy animal that was hunted, place this trophy that is judged into the correct age class, and then measure the trophy according to this system.
So, once again, to repeat, it is the intention not to say how old an animal has been, but it is the intention to place animals that were hunted into age classes. Immature, these should not be hunted by trophy hunters. In the prime, they are in the process of breeding. They can be hunted, but the aim is to hunt animals past their prime.
As the horns and tusks of the animals serve as tools and weapons, it must be taken into account that it is characteristic for old trophy animals that the tips of the horns or tusks are broomed off, and often the tip of a horn is broken with age, often in an uneven way for the two horns. For this reason, it appears unjust to disadvantage trophies with the tips of one horn shorter than the other.
Please note that for this course, we have concentrated mostly on the primary factors. It is vital to understand that we should never let only one or certain factors determine our decision on in which class to place a trophy, but a balanced opinion on the summary of all the factors. It is important to note that the shape of the horns depends on genetic makeup of an animal and not on age. Horn tips pointing outward in a kudu, for example, is not a question of age, but of genetics. The same applies to the tips of springbuck horns pointing backwards, or a closed boss in buffalo, and many other characteristic traits in other species. The thickness of horns, tusks, etc. is not age-related. It depends on genetics and possibly variances in mineral intake. With reaching sexual maturity, the horns, tusks, etc. of trophy animals have very much reached their full length and thickness and their final shape. From now on, only a very limited amount of secondary growth takes place, which can be clearly differentiated from the primary growth and serves as a means of age determination. It must be noted that the horn tips are the first to appear in young antelopes, and the tips then are constantly pushed upwards as new horn cells develop at the base, until the final shape and size is reached with sexual maturity, when primary growth slows down or stops. The youngest horn cells are always at the base and the oldest at the tips of the horns. This is of major importance. Aging of horn cells, and in particular at the base, is the most reliable indicator of age in all antelope and buffalo species and serve as the primary and decisive age determination factor. Lastly, in order to achieve a fair and uniform measurement system, it is agreed that any and all borderline cases will always be graded down to the younger age level.
The wear of molars could not be ascertained as a truly reliable factor, as it is too much dependent on environmental factors like nature of fodder, drought conditions, etc. Molar wear is only taken into account as a secondary or additional age determination factor. Like tooth wear, ossification of skull sutures to a considerable extent is dependent on the nature of fodder and only serves as additional age determination factor. Wear and tear on horns and tusks depends largely on individual habits and, like tooth wear and ossification of skull sutures, is only used as additional or secondary age determination factor.
I think every professional hunter should be able to identify an animal that was not yet in the prime. A horned animal that was not in the prime, that was still in the process of growing, has soft, velvety bases. You can see this here with this springbok very clearly. It has had soft, velvety bases, although from the shape many people will say this is an old animal. This is not true. It was an animal of perhaps 3 years old. It had soft and velvety bases. Now, once the animal is physically mature, the bases start to harden. They become very solid. This is most easily seen in buffalo, but also in all other horned animals. Here now we have a springbok trophy that is in the prime of prime age. The bases are hard. There is no velvety material, but there is no secondary growth. The secondary growth and inward growth is what shows us that an animal was past the prime. Here now we have a springbok that was past the prime. It is not that easy perhaps to see from the video, but you can see that there is small lamellae growth, secondary growth, and inward growth. The inward growth is one of the criteria, apart the secondary growth, that shows us that an animal was very old. So this springbok is not only solid in the basis, but it has secondary growth. You can see these small, fine secondary growth things, and even here is a growth, certain secondary growth that is not related to the prime growth. So this shows us that this springbok was very old, apart from other factors which we will come to in later sessions. In warthog, in principle it is the same. The tusks of a warthog, they grow until the animal has reached physical maturity. This warthog tusk can show us that this animal was not mature because the circumference at the base is bigger than the circumference in the center, and it is very hollow. The nerve cavity is very big. This tusk was still growing. Here now we have a warthog that was in the prime. The growth was more or less fulfilled. It is smaller at the base than in the center, and it has a relatively small nerve cavity. This one is in the prime, this one is immature, it would be disqualified, and here now we have a warthog tusk of a very, very old boar. First of all, the circumference at the base is smaller than at the center. This is an indication of maturity. Then the nerve cavity is very small. It is a very old animal. And then, just like with the horned animals, you can see that there is sort of a secondary lamellar growth at the base of this warthog tusk. So this should This is an impala. It has a nice trophy on first sight, but the tips will show those of us which are experienced that it was not very old, but I don't want to concentrate on secondary factors now. A primary factor is that the bases were still soft. This was an immature impala. It should not have been hunted. Then here we have a very old impala. It has so-called socks, which would be a sign of a prime animal, but then, very important, it has inward growth lamella, and then there is a sort of a growth which clearly is not in line with the primary growth. This is secondary growth together with the inward growth and the lamella. It shows us that this is an animal past the prime. This factors can very easily seen with the Gemsbock, and therefore I briefly would like to point this out with the Gemsbock. This is a very old Gemsbock trophy. Until this point here, it was primary growth. Then the animal had reached its prime and the sort of uniform growth stopped, and now, after some years, secondary growth started in this kind of secondary growth rings. In Gemsbock, we can see that very perfectly and very easily. Just to close off, here is an extremely old Gemsbock bull. The primary growth stopped somewhere here. Then we have secondary growth, lamellar growth, and then this kind of additional growth. Could see that at the springbok, at the impala, and also at this very, very old Gemsbock bull.
Most professional hunting guides, and especially those that have been in the field for a few years, will know when an animal is too young, immature, to hunt, and when it is too old, past prime. The difficulty comes in when trying to determine the age class in between, prime, and even more so when looking at borderline cases from immature to prime. We will therefore briefly touch on the judging of live animals in the field. Here you can see two pictures of kudu. One is immature, the other one is past prime. The picture below is of an immature and prime kudu bull. Many of the age features that will now be explained can be seen in these two specimens. Focus on the two specimens and compare the two while listening. Although it takes a bit of practice, the best way to age is to firstly ignore the horns and start by judging the body, stature of an animal. Horns can be deceiving, and if it is a big trophy carrier, one might be inclined to ignore body age factors. Furthermore, myths about especially horns persist, like a kudu bull is old when the tip points outwards, or that a springbok ram is old when the tip points backwards. Both myths are false. The horn growth is purely genetic, and horn form is reached before prime when the animal is still immature. In young animals, immature, and this is especially true for antelope and gazelle species, the whole stature appears youthful. The body looks long and slim, the neck is relatively inconspicuous, and hence the animal carries the head high when walking relaxed. The gait also appears stocky. Facial features are also still youthful, and the face as such appears longer. When an animal reaches prime, where it starts to actively partake in the breeding process, the stature of the animal changes. The body moves into more of a box shape, appearing as wide as it is long, so to speak. The neck becomes thicker and heavier due to the active grooming to be able to fight for dominance. Overall, the body appears very muscular. In some species, the neck bulges with muscles, in particular during the rut. Consequently, the head is carried lower and the gait becomes more fluent and determined in a way. The face does not appear youthful anymore and begins to broaden, and in some species the nose bone appears to bulge in the profile view. As the animal moves from the prime to past prime, the body stature becomes even more pronounced in that it is markedly boxy, often the back sagging below the shoulders and hip line. Overall, the body appears to have less hair, often bald patches are present, the neck is heavy, and often a delap of some sort develops that extends to the chest bone. In many species, past prime animals darken with age and therefore stand out against younger individuals. Past prime animals carry their head low, and the profile view of the head clearly shows age by the bulging nose and defined eye sockets and snout. The gait of the animal appears almost in slow motion and is grand or noble in stark contrast to younger individuals. In past prime animals, near its ends, the body starts to recede again, with the muscles starting to lessen again. Apart from the shabby, almost dirty look, an ancient animal can be distinguished from an immature one by the disproportionate stature, where the front, due to its skeletal structure of supporting the muscles needed for dominant fight, appears bigger compared to the sagging back quarters and the sloppy neck and head. The head in ancient animals is still carried low. Ancient animals mostly lead a secretive and solitary life away from the herds.
Once you have classed the animal into an age group, note not the specific age in years. You can also take the horns into account for aging. In immature animals, the soft velvety base in horns is almost always clearly discernible. Even if the animal appears prime, for instance, but the horns are still soft and velvety, i.e. grey at the base, the animal is too young. Furthermore, horns in immature animals have a vital and fresh appearance as they are still actively being fed with nutrients for development. Once the animal becomes a prime animal, the bases are no longer grey, as they have hardened and horn development has largely stopped. Although it is more pronounced in past prime animals, the horns also appear less vital and shiny due to lowering testosterone levels towards the past prime age class. Secondary aging criteria like brooming and breakage should be applied with caution and should only be used after aging the body, the stature of the animal. In some cases, being close to the quarry, aging criteria like secondary growth or inward growth at the base and flaking off of horn cell or cell patches can also be seen. Again, this should be used to confirm, if possible, the impression the body has given. It should be noted that horn growth is largely completed before the animal reaches the prime and is furthermore genetically determined, and therefore horn form should never be used as an aging criteria. Secondly, if an animal looks too young or you are unsure whether it is already prime, it probably is too young. Always rather class it lower. In tusked animals and predators, judging should mainly be on body features, the stature. Our main tusked animals, warthog and elephant, underlie the same criteria. Only the neck is of course not as obvious. Elephant, in any case, is a topic on its own and is of particular importance for aspiring big game PHs.
Please remember that it is vital to understand that we should never let only one or certain factors determine our decisions on in which class to place a trophy, but a balanced opinion on the summary of all factors.
we have 3 big Springbok trophies here. Now, first of all, the age, of course, is of importance, of great importance. This Springbok horns show velvety, soft material at the base. The cell structure is very young, very vital. These are decisive factors, and then secondary factors. The tips are very pointed. This one, clearly visible with a velvety, soft basis, was an immature animal. Although it is a big trophy of 16 inches, we can disqualify or have to disqualify this Springbok trophy. Then we have another trophy here. It has solid basis. There is no velvety material left, but at the base there is no inward growth and no lamellar growth. The horn cells appear very vital. They are black. And then secondary factor, the tips are still very pointed. They were not used very much. This one is a mature trophy of suitable age, but it is not an animal that was very old. This trophy here, on first sight, it has lost color due to lowering of testosterone levels. The bases are solid. There is inward growth at the base. There is lamellar growth at the base. Then secondary factors, the tips of the horns are worn and blunted. This one is an animal past the prime. Springbok A, I start measuring at the lowest point of the base, following all bends and curves of the horn, always along the middle of the horn towards the tip. And the length is 46 centimeters. I record this measurement. Then the circumference of the base for Springbok A at the thickest point, and it is 14.8 centimeters. I write down the measurement. As it is an animal in the prime, the age factor will be 1.0, so this leaves us for trophy A with 60.8 points score. The last one, the old male, I measure the longer horn, this one. Same. Come up with 46 centimeters, so the length of these trophies is the same. Circumference of the longest horn is 15.8 centimeters, and as this is an animal past the prime, the age factor will be 1.1. So, although both trophies are more or less of same size, exactly the same length, the bigger trophy, the better trophy, according to the age-related measurement system, is this old animal past the prime